The circus ends and these tents come down. With those words, Sheriff Paul Penzone erased the worldwide symbol of Joe Arpaio's 24-year rule. Penzone's announcement last week was dramatic, his thinking pragmatic. Tent City's occupancy less than 50%. There's no evidence it deters criminals, as Joe Arpaio said it would. Closing it will save an estimated $4.5 million a year. Detention officers can then be moved to safer settings. Sheriff Paul Penzone joining us this morning. Welcome back.
Good morning.
Been quite a week. I want to start with a clip of what you said 6 months ago on this show, just a few weeks before Election Day. Let's listen.
There's no need for it right now, and I know a lot of people are attached to it, but we need to let that go and say what is best for taxpayers, for safety, for detention officers, for inmates, on how we house those that we're responsible for.
Those were your comments on Tent City. There is no need for it. I thought at the time your mind was largely made up. It doesn't look like much changed over the last 6 months, but was there anything you heard or saw in that period that said to you, maybe I'm wrong on this?
It wasn't so much more whether I was right or wrong. Those were my instincts, but what was most important was having the opportunity to meet with the men and the women of the organization who have worked in detention for many, many years, 2 to 3 decades, and hearing from those who are truly professionals, their thoughts on it, their concerns relative to our staffing model throughout the organization, and what they thought was best moving forward. So taking that into consideration, which I did not have prior to becoming sheriff, and then utilizing a third party to give me their outside thoughts and evaluations, all brought it back to the same place, which is this is not new. This has been discussed long before I became sheriff, the inefficiencies. It was just a matter of me being, as you said, pragmatic to go through the process to ensure it was factual and I was making the appropriate and responsible decision.
So not one thing came up that you thought, let's take another look at this.
Well, there's always variables outside of my control. We talk about the issue of crime and the impact, the challenge with immigration, but I have to work with the practicality of where are we today and what are we dealing with and what is truly the most responsible decision, not only for taxpayer dollars, most importantly for me, the safety of my detention officers. We're short 200 officers. We're not overcoming that anytime soon, so how can I consolidate these jails and bring that staffing model together so that we're more safe?
You've been choosing your words carefully since becoming sheriff. That opening line, the circus is over, that was probably the strongest thing you've said yet, and it seemed to me it wasn't just about the tents, but it was about the reign of Joe Arpaio. Is that the declaration you're making with this move?
No, you spoke of symbolism, and I don't think symbolism should ever be more important to us than professionalism.
But this is incredibly symbolic.
Sure. Yeah, it has a symbolism to it, but for me, I want the men and women in this organization to be viewed as true professionals, and I believe that when you have a detention center and you promote it in a manner that it is truly the defining characteristic of your organization, and you parade people through that detention center as though you're showing off the inmates as if they are, in some ways, circus animals, and you put detention officers at greater risk because now they're responsible to run tours as tour guides. To me, that is a circus-like atmosphere, and I think more of those employees than to put them through that exercise.
I've been getting a lot of questions after this. Number one, pink underwear, where does that stand?
We've already started transitioning that out. With our last purchase of it's not just the underwear, actually, the towels, the sheets, everything had been pink. Everything coming in now is white. We're not getting rid of all the pink stuff until it actually has its wear out period. But over time, we'll cycle all those things through, and that'll be the end of it. And again, a discussion with the staff saying, have you seen any impact with pink that is a benefit? And they're like, no, pink is nonsense, so let's move on.
It's a huge site. In the past, there's been talk about using it as some kind of homeless shelter or area. Is that part of the discussion, or is there any discussion of what will go there?
There's discussion. That hasn't really been part of the discussion, but we have some ideas on ways that we can utilize that land in an effective manner so that we are giving the inmates opportunities to have, as opposed to idle time hands, put them to work in some capacity and do some positive things with that space. But we haven't locked down yet. I'll go through the same exercise, which is look at all the possibilities and say what is best for the public we serve and what's going to be most productive for the population that we deal with.
Moving on to immigration, immigration rights advocates want you to boot the ICE agents out of your jail. Do you see any scenario where you might do that?
Not in the current circumstances. There are certain things that are occurring in D.C. and with the administration there that may at some point in time put us in a position where we have to make sure that we're law-abiding and any rules or things that come from D.C. that require us to take action. But in the current state that we're in, no, it's not our job to be federal law enforcement agents when it comes to immigration, but we do have a responsibility of public safety. So it will stay as it is unless there's other factors that require me to reconsider that. But right now, there's no reason for us to make those changes.
And you seems you have new competition now, private prisons. Mesa's considering going to a private prison instead of housing its inmates at your jails. They say your costs are just way too high. How big a concern is that you might lose, well, a city that's a pretty big customer?
There's two elements. The costs, yes. I mean, here we look at the action that we just took. It was meant to create a cost savings so that as we become more efficient, we can make sure that our pricing structure as to our law enforcement partners is fair and equitable. But I am concerned because anytime we privatize housing inmates, then there's a profit element. And if we start in a situation where now it's a for-profit industry, we're changing legislation, possibly the lobbyists pushing things through where it requires longer sentences. We're less inclined to have diversionary programs to try to reduce recidivism. So I'm highly concerned of why we're going there. But at the end of the day, I have to be efficient with our jails so that our partners understand. And can I speak one more issue, Bram, if you don't mind? The challenge is this. My understanding is all those privatized incarcerations or detentions, they're going to be taking those that are least expensive to themselves. In other words, the inmates that come at very little cost. They don't have medical expenses or mental illness. They're not highly violent. We still have to deal with those inmates, which means that the ones that cost the most to house are still going to be our burden, where they reap the benefit of taking those that are least expensive, and there has to be a balance within that. So if we don't have the end where it is least expensive, it offsets in a negative manner. Am I making sense?
So it sounds like if Mesa goes, your expenses might go up.
There could be a negative impact on our organization.
And where does that stand? Are you talking to them? Could you work this out?
We have had discussions, and what I'm trying to do now is put data together to help all of our law enforcement partners understand the implications and what we're working towards to try to reduce costs and be more efficient, so that don't look at where we are, look at where we're trying to go, and can we work in that direction together.
All right, Chef Paul Penzone, thanks so much for joining us.
Always a pleasure, sir.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.